Hello everyone and welcome back to the Keep Productive YouTube channel. It is Francesco here, and in today's video we're very lucky to be joined by Justin Goff, who is the product manager over at Duolingo. Now I got in touch with Camille from Notion, who was very lucky, very kind of her to set us up, and Justin is going to be kind enough to sort of share a few of the different ways that he uses Notion inside the team. But Justin, for those who are a little bit curious about your work at Duolingo, maybe you can give a bit of an introduction to your role.
Sure. I'm one of a large and growing team of product managers at Duolingo. My current product is the Duolingo English test. It's a test of English as a second language, and it's meant to compete with tests like TOEFL and IELTS for university admissions. Our test is online only. No test centers, and something you can take from any internet connection anywhere in the world. Takes about 1 hour and costs about $49. So we're really trying to drastically expand access to that kind of testing. I mentioned I'm one of multiple product managers at Duolingo. Wide range of teams are using Notion in a wide range of ways, including myself. I'm using it for things that are not specifically related to the Duolingo English test. But today we're going to look at specifically how we're using it on that Duolingo English test team.
100%. And I quite liked, obviously, that Justin's picked out 5 sort of features that he specifically uses within the team. But I wanted to touch on there as well, because people who may not know what Duolingo is, but I really doubt it, because you guys are one of the biggest language learning apps. For those who don't know, Duolingo has, I believe it was over 300 million downloads, which is absolutely insane across multiple countries, and they're always winning awards for their app design. So, Justin, first question for you is more of the reason why you went for Notion in the first place. Maybe you can take us through how you discovered it and why you and your team decided to use it.
Well, we discovered it. We have a weekly meeting for product managers where, among other things, we kind of talk shop and share tips, hacks, and productivity tools. I can't remember who mentioned Notion in that context. We were kind of listing tools we knew about. I got started with Notion right around the same time a lot of others did here as well. I think the thing that was so striking for us was the way that it's so flexible in how you can display the same piece of information in different contexts and in different ways. And that was a great fit for us because we have so many specialized tools per role and per function that really are very well tailored for that role or for that function. But we didn't have any central area where we could kind of bring it all together and coordinate work across functions and across tools. And that's really what Notion has done for us in a number of different areas.
Fantastic. And just out of curiosity, what other project managers were you trying before? What was your sort of journey to Notion?
I've used a lot. I'm a, as you might have guessed, given how quickly I accepted your invitation, I really like I really like productivity tools. So at various points for these kinds of jobs, I've used Evernote, Trello, Asana, Hacky, Google Sheets, Gantt charts, and obviously, Jira, Pivotal Tracker once way back in the day. Just a whole bunch of different ways for tracking work. And, a lot of those, like for Jira especially, like we are still using Jira specifically for tracking, like engineering tasks. And it has a host of useful integrations with the other tools we use for engineering. No one who's not an engineer wants to look at Jira. So, it's helpful to have like a cross-functional, like readable layer sitting on top of it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think Notion brings that for sure. And a question there when it comes to Notion, how many of your team are active on the Notion workspace?
Geez, I can double check real quick. It's in the dozens. most of the Duolingo English test team is active. Um, Outside of our team, it's especially common for coordination among uh, product managers, designers, and engineering leads. Um, so I'm looking through, it's a significant portion of the team. It
Fantastic.
would be hard for me to pull the specific numbers outside of the Duolingo English test of who's using it.
Not a problem. And of course, like it's really good to see that sort of use case. And you've picked out sort of five really good examples. We've both got them in front of us. Obviously, naturally, we couldn't share an active Notion account. That's just based on privacy. But of course, the first one, this is more of how you're using it for the roadmap and the testing, right? So I quite like the way you're using properties here. Maybe you can take us through how and how that works.
Yeah, yeah. And each of the examples we're going to look at are all built around the same like roadmap workflow. On the Duolingo English test team, it's the workflow we're using to track our product engineering work and also our marketing work. So what you see in front of you here, this example, it's an A/B test we ran in the product. Um, and we use these different properties to kind of track the work and display it differently in different contexts. I'll just call out a couple of the really important properties here. You see the team property is which group within the team is owning it. You see the status is fairly self-explanatory. We'll see a view that goes by component later, which is helpful. We also do that effort estimate to help us with our sprint planning, which you'll see in a bit. You'll see the quarter and the sprint below. And we actually have the rollout date for this experiment and the date when it finished. And finally, you see there's a link to another workflow we have specifically for design tasks. And that can be helpful because it's not always a one-to-one relationship between a roadmap item and a design task. And the design tasks have kind of a simpler workflow. They don't need quite as much information here as we do for the roadmap items. But this is really the heart of how we're managing our product and marketing work on the Duolingo English.
Fantastic.
A whole bunch of things that look just like this screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the way that you're using the impact and motivation section as well. That's quite nice because loads of people tend to just go straight for the multiple select property windows, but that's quite a nice little addition there just to remind you of what's happening during the day. Um, and moving on to the second view, this is the Kanban view. Take us through, because obviously this is the different stages of the project once it's live, right?
Yeah, so this zooms in on the statuses where members of the team are actively working on it. So in the planning phase, that's again self-explanatory. We're getting ready to build the thing. And the building phase, we are actively building it. The testing phase is where we're measuring the results of the change we made, and we have that special column for work that's blocked. Where there's something in the way that keeps it from progressing through the workflow. That Kanban goes a little further too. We have statuses for whether we launched or shut down an experiment, which we'll kind of see later when we look at that retrospective. This Kanban here is kind of where the people who own each of these projects live from day to day,
Yeah.
kind of making sure that nothing's getting delayed and that everything's moving through the flow as quickly as we can.
Brilliant. So this is like your project dashboard. Everyone comes in here and every morning checks in what everyone's working on, moves stuff across, and obviously the next one is high level planning. So this is where you do your sprint planning, right?
That's right. So if you look at the sprint plan here, we do this kind of broad plan on a quarterly basis, and then obviously it adjusts as we sprint. But this is our high level place for making sure that everything that's critical in the quarter is accounted for and that we've got time and space to get it done. It's also the place where people who are not involved in the day-to-day product and marketing activity, they can come here and get, again, like a high-level picture of what's coming when, and what was recently shipped, what the status of each of these projects is. That's particularly helpful for the parts of the team that are customer facing. Like we have a part of the team that works with universities to accept the test and help them use the test. They need to know what's coming when, so they can communicate with universities about it. But they don't need the level of detail of what's going through every day. And I don't want them to spend their time trying to decipher Jira, right?
Yeah,
The
that's it.
information they need is maybe 10% of what gets recorded in Jira. So
That's it. And I think some people will probably be looking at these different, like the sprint plan table that you've got here and the Kanban view, and probably thinking they're two or three separate different databases, but this is one database, isn't it?
yeah,
And
that's
that's
one
what you quite like
database.
about it.
Yeah,
I can tell
that's what
that's
I mean.
something.
Yeah, when
Yeah,
I say like the power of being able to have like one source of truth about a project, but then really quickly and intuitively slice it and display it in different ways for different people. Right. So
yeah,
if you're someone working on it, you can go dive right into that chart itself, and it can have its own database inside it of like subtasks and everything you want. Um, but it's so easy to layer on top of that what people outside the project actually need and want to see, and again, like display it in ways that matter. Um, I've seen other teams use this where they have their release cadence and they put the release date. Um, we kind of have an ongoing release process. Other teams don't, and so they put the release date on, and you can see the release calendar shown in kind of calendar view. And again, it's all drawn from the same underlying data, which is just huge. It's so helpful.
oh, it's insane. The views are like so many people find them as like they're like untapped potential.
Yeah,
But you guys are obviously using them quite quite aggressively, which is good.
yeah,
Um, and the next section is it drills down a little bit deeper, um, and it focuses on the components. Do you want to talk through how you guys use that?
yeah. This is something that's particularly relevant to us on the Duolingo English test team. Our numbers are such that like it's really hard for us to run multiple A/B tests on a given step in the user flow at the same time. It just takes a long time for us to get enough data to interpret. So one of our important dependencies is that we can really only run one experiment per step at a given time, and this is a way for us to visualize that. Right? Like what does our backlog look like for our splash page? What does our backlog look like for the sign up flow? And so I've left two open here that we recently launched, where we made some changes to the splash page, we made some changes to the sign up flow. It's totally fine to run those experiments at the same time. They were independent, they don't affect the same screens. Um, but we can't do the next item in the backlog for any one of those given components until the first one is shipped. Again, it's just another way of visualizing our work and making sure that we're maximizing return on investment. Because ideally, we want to have one test running on every component on any
Oh
given
yeah.
day, because that's how we're learning the fastest.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to the sort of happiness of using the tool, and I'd say your general results, have you felt that the results of using these different views have impacted the way the team works?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And actually, I think the next one is a great example of that. Um, our retrospective process has gotten so much easier because of the way we use Notion. So it's extremely easy to call up a list of all the experiments we did, which ones were launched. It helps us with hypothesizing about why the things that worked and why the things that didn't. Not only can we see it while we're writing the retrospective, like it is the retrospective, like right in there we have the table. Here's all the things we tested and shipped in quarter 3, and it's
Yeah,
right there below the conclusions we're drawing from what we shipped in that quarter and what the results were. This is just something that was difficult enough that we didn't do it super rigorously or
yeah,
super consistently in previous quarters. But once we started using Notion, it was I mean, it was almost hard not to have these insights because of the way you could see
yeah,
this data presented in front of you. Um,
definitely. And one thing there, that's obviously like a post-mortem sort of each project. And do you go about, how do you go about archiving that? Do you have a certain archive process, or do you just keep them in the done
We
area?
kind of keep them in a, yeah, we kind of keep them in a folder. So, um, what we've started doing is each quarter we have our plan for that quarter,
Mhm.
and um, the plan again, it also includes all of these planning views that we just looked at, and the end of the plan for the quarter is the retrospective, right? So it's like a little folder for the quarterly planning,
Yeah,
and the last item in the folder is the retrospective for that quarter. And
yeah,
so we kind of are starting to build an archive of not only here's what we planned at the start of the quarter,
yeah,
here's what we learned by the end of the quarter, and here's kind of a record of everything we did. So I think that's one of the things that can be difficult if you're iterating really quickly, is that actually like build and preserve that knowledge over time and use it to kind of like improve your batting average as
yeah,
you're
yeah,
iterating going forward. It's very easy to kind of like end up repeating the same things if you're really sort of short-term iteration focused. And this has just really helped us build our knowledge over time and improve our iterations over time.
yeah. And you're just going to continually improve
Yep.
each time you sort of learn and speak to the team about it. Um,
And just if you don't mind me calling out, you can
yeah, of
see
course.
that
Yeah,
here on the retrospective thing where you see there's the end of the insights about quarter three is what could have gone better section.
yeah,
And then you see the what's next, and there's our Q4 growth plan, right? So the
yeah,
end of the retrospective leads directly into the growth plan for
yeah.
the next quarter, and um, it can all be kind of tied together very seamlessly and very, very easily.
Yeah, everyone's a click away from what they need to do next, which I really like about Notion. I really like the. Thank you first off for sharing all that, because
Yeah.
that was really insightful. And I think one of the things that teams struggle with, and it's probably my final question, is one of the things that teams struggle with when they're looking at Notion is, how do I get started? Because obviously that's like, it's such a big ship that
Yeah.
you're like, do I start with the oars? Do I start with the sail? What was the thing that, what was the sort of ball rolling for you? Was it the database, or how did you get started?
It was the database for us,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So the initiating problem for us was that cross-functional communication about what we're working on and what's coming next.
yeah,
Uh, And so for us, it was really starting with the workflow and then figuring out kind of what to do around the workflow. We quickly noticed from that even outside of the workflow, it can be a very good like brainstorming space. So
mm,
often a lot of our very rough like brainstorming ideas are just blank pages in Notion that we start throwing stuff together in. One of the amazing powers there of Notion is that you can drag and drop it to turn it into a roadmap item, right? Like add it to
yeah,
a database, and like we just kind of messy notes space can evolve into, okay, this is the concrete thing we're doing. This is what we're
yeah,
working on. This is its status. It's all very, very seamless.
yeah. The random ramblings can turn into something usable.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. And like it's not even
Justin,
just the
yeah,
random ramblings, by the way. Like I went into it assuming that it was like, okay, a page could turn into a database item, and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it's actually any individual block, right? So you could
Oh,
take
that's,
a
yeah,
line of text from a brainstorm and drag it over, and now it's the next thing you're working on.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
all,
just really
it's
cool.
definitely all usable, flexible.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time out to dive into that.
yeah. Thank you for having
Where
me.
No, no, no. It's fantastic. I think the more sort of explanations that people have about how teams use it, the better, and the deeper people can go. And I think this is great for product managers, all types of departments. So thank you.
Yeah, happy to
Awesome.
help. Thanks for having
And
me.
where can everyone find you after the call?
LinkedIn is a great place to find me. My email address is also super easy. It's just Justin at Duolingo.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Justin, and let's keep in touch. But I hope you continue having a great experience with Notion. It
There we
cut
go.
out
We're
then.
back. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to put this one out. So we'll keep in touch about the release of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
All right.
Enjoy the
All right. Have a
rest
good
of
one.
your evening.
Yeah, I'm going bowling, so it should be fun.
Oh, fun. Awesome.
Yeah. All right, Justin. Thanks,
See ya.
and I will let you know about the release. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Cheers. Thanks for those. All right. Bye.